Hello everyone, welcome back to chapter number 10 of our Azure series. So in this chapter we are diving into the hands-on demonstration of Azure Virtual Network, that is VNet, one of the foundational components of Azure networking. But before we begin, let's do a quick recap of chapter number 9. So in chapter number 9 we explored the core concepts of networking, starting from traditional networking basics to how networking works in the cloud. We understood what a virtual network is and broke it down into its key components such as subnet, firewalls, network security groups, and IP address managements. So if you haven't watched chapter number 9 yet, I highly recommend you to check it out first, as this demonstration builds directly on the concept that we discussed there. So now in this chapter we will put all that points that we discussed into an action. So we'll create a virtual network. This will be the foundation of our network infrastructure in Azure. Then we'll set up a subnet inside that virtual network. We will define a subnet to logically isolate and host resources. Then we'll create or we'll deploy a virtual machine within the subnet where we will host our first React web app, and we'll configure a firewall to secure our VNet. We will add firewall rules and manage access using network security groups and IP filtering, and using this access management. So in that you will learn how to manage incoming and outgoing traffic, restrict access to specific IPs, and ensure your app is secure and accessible. By the end of this chapter you will have an understanding of how to structure a secure VNet, how to host a web app inside the virtual machine, and control access with firewall and security rules. All the theoretical concepts that we discussed in the previous chapter, we will now come into the life in the practical demo. So this is going to be a very interesting and hands-on session. So sit back, relax, and get started by creating our first Azure virtual network and deploying React web applications securely within it. So once we log into the Azure portal, then we will be navigating to this dashboard page or the landing page of the Azure portal. So where you will see all the services that Azure provides. So in that, as I mentioned, we have to create first virtual network and then we'll proceed ahead. So before that, as I mentioned, to create any service in Azure, we have to create first resource group. Let's first create the resource group. So let's click on the resource group. Once you click on the resource group, you will be navigating to this new window. Here you will have two options. On the left corner there is one create plus icon, or otherwise there is one button. So let's click on this create, and then I will be navigating to this resource group creation page where there are three tabs: basic, tags, and review plus create. So we need to fill the basic. In that we have to add the resource group name. So we'll add the name that is VNet demo RG, and then we'll use the region that is Central India, but in your case if you want you can change the region as per your requirement. And then let's click on the review plus create. So it will be validating, and once everything is done, then let's click on the create. So now you can see resource group is created. Now let's again go back to the home and let's start creating our first virtual network. So let's click on the virtual network option or the service, and you will be navigating to this window. Here you can click on simply let's create button. Once you click, then you will again navigating to this network or the virtual network creation page where there are a couple of tabs, that is basic, security, IP address, tags, and review plus create. So let's enter the details in basic tab. So if you see the subscription, as I mentioned, I'm using this pay as you go, but if you are using for the testing purpose or understanding the Azure portal purpose, so you can use the free subscription. It is 1 month trial for students or the professionals, or if you have using this pay as you go, then you can use the subscription that is auto populated. And then the resource group that we have just created, that is by default selected, but if you want you can create a resource group from this option, or you can select the previously created resource group by using this drop down menu. So now let's scroll down and let's add the virtual network name. So I'll give the name that is TA demo net, and the region that I mentioned, that is Central India, but you can change as per your needs. And now let's click on the next. So in the security tab we have to select this couple of checkboxes or enable some security. So in that, will not encrypt the virtual network. So we'll keep this as is. As I mentioned, so we are doing this for the demo purpose. So I will keep the most of setting as is. But in the Azure Bastion, so we'll use this checkbox because we'll try to access our virtual machine or virtual network using this SSH. So will for the connectivity to your virtual machines. So we will use to connect the virtual machine, we'll use this Azure Bastion option. So I will enable this, and that Azure Bastion host name, that is TADMO VNet Bastion, and the Azure Bastion public IP. So you can create, if you want, you can create differently, but in that we have added this standard IP address range. So let's click and then we have to enable. So as I mentioned, we are doing we are setting this firewall also. So let's click on this enable firewall setting. So then in the once we click on the checkbox, all the default setting will be enabled. So in Azure firewall name, that is TADMO VNet firewall, is auto populated, and the subnet name is Azure firewall subnet. Then we are using the tier, that is standard one, because as I mentioned, we are using this for demo purpose, but in your case, if you want, you can change the tier and the policies. So we'll not change any policies, and the IP address, that we'll use the default one. Then let's click on the next, and we'll not enable this Azure network protection. So we'll not enable this feature. Basically, this network protection is used for restricting the unwanted attacks on the network. Then let's click on next. Then there is this the next tab, that is IP addresses. And in the previous chapter, we have already covered how to define the size of virtual network, which means the number of IP addresses are allowed to that particular virtual network. And we have already seen what is CIDR and its concept. So as I mentioned, we are using this or the IP address range for the provided IP address range, that is /16, which means 65536 addresses are allowed. But if you want, you can change the depending upon the requirement of the range of the IP addresses, but we'll use this default one, that is 65,536 addresses are allowed. In that, the default one and the subnet are getting added. So now let's click on next, where we'll not fill anything in the tags. So now let's quickly jump to the review plus create, and it is validating the details that we entered. So if you see, running the validation, and once the validation is done, all the details that we entered will need to be cross-validate or cross-verify. The basic setting, that the subscription that we added, that's pay as you go, the resource group, and the name that we added for the virtual network, and the region, and many more. So everything is okay, and the IP address range that we selected, that is default one, the subnet is associated, and the firewall opening or firewall setting that we enabled. And to access the virtual machines, we enable this Azure Bastion option. So everything is okay. So now let's click on create to start our deployment of our virtual network, and you will see deployment is in progress. So now deployment is completed. We have successfully created VNet. So now let's again go back, or let's click on go to resource and check the details that we adding while creating this virtual network. So the resource group, the location, subscription, and the DNS server name or the address, and all the details, that virtual network ID, it's this. So now let's quickly again go back to the dashboard, and let's create the virtual machine first, and then we'll create a once we created this resource, then we'll try to host our or create the first React app on that virtual machine. So once you click on this virtual machine, yeah, then you will be navigating to this window, and let's click on this create button, and here just choose the first option, that is virtual machine. And once you click, then you will be navigating to this virtual machine creation windows or page, where you will see a couple of tabs where we need to fill the details. And on the right corner, the estimated monthly cost will be auto populated once you select this region, pricing models, and everything, and accordingly it will be estimated. So you can hide or unhide these options. So now let's on this basic setting, let's enter the details. So the subscription that we already auto populated, pay as you go, and the resource group that we use, that is VNet demo RG, and then the virtual machine name, that is TA React Demo VM, that we'll add then this name, and the region, that is Central India, and the availability zone, that is self-selected zone, but if you want you can change as per the requirement. So I'll use this self-selected zone, and then in zone 1, and in that availability zone, that is zone 1. So in the previous chapter we have already seen to selecting the regions and the availability zone. So once you selected the region, in our case we have selected this central India, then the provider will create the virtual network within that region. So we have selected the central India as a region. So now in that availability zone, or in zone 1, the virtual net is created. So we'll use the security type as trusted a virtual machine, and then image will use Ubuntu 22.4 latest. But if you want you can simply click on this see all images, and you will be navigating to this marketplace where you can select the select the image or choose the image as per the requirement. If you want you can select this Windows Server or Ubuntu or any other. Then let's simply close this. So now we have selected this image, the VM architecture that is by default, that is x64, and then the size. So here is the most important part. So what is the size that you require to set up this virtual machine? So you can simply click on see all sizes, and in that, so I'm doing this for the demo purpose, so I'll use this as B1S series, which is costed approximately 0.93 cost per hour. But if you want you can change as per the requirement. There are some series, that is D series and many more of the virtual machine. So I'll use this B1S, and then I will click on this select button. It will be populating like this. Authentication part, I wanted to access this virtual machine using password, so I'll give the name. I need to add the username, that is I will add demo1, and then the password, let's enter the password, that is confirm the password. And once the password and confirm password is matched, then you can see it is green tick is appear on this right corner of the input. Then in the inbound port rule, let's select this SSH. Along with that, let's make this HTTP AT also selected as inbound, and let's go to this disk tab. Here we don't need to fill anything on this disk. So let's quickly jump to the networking, and in the networking, this virtual network is auto populated that we created while creating this virtual network. We have added the name, that is TA demo VNet, if you remember. So this virtual network is selected, and the subnet for this virtual network is already mapped, that is 10.0.0.0/24, and according to that range, this IP address or the subnet is allocated. And the public IP for our virtual machine, that is TA React Demo App IP. Then the NIC network security group, that is basic one that we selected, and the inbound port, that is 80 and 20 HTTP and SSH will be allowed. Then we'll just enable this checkbox to, that is delete public IP and NIC when virtual machine is deleted. So let's click on this checkbox. So basically once we deleting this virtual machine, then associated public IPs and NIC will be automatically deleted once we delete the virtual machine. So that's why we have to select this checkbox. And in load balancing, we don't need to set up anything, because we'll cover this load balancing part in next chapter. So we'll keep this as is, that is we'll select the radio, that is none. And then let's quickly go to this management. Here we don't need to fill anything in this management, or we don't need to set up the monitoring tool. We'll see all those things in the later chapter. So I will quickly jump to this review plus create. Here it will be validating all the details that we entered. So if you see running final validations and everything is done, the validation is passed, you can see on the screen. And let's cross check the details that we entered. That the pricing model, that is we have selected this B1S as the size of our virtual machine, and accordingly the sizing will be added. The subscription credit apply on that my subscription, that is 0.9318 INR per hour. And the details that we added on the basic tab and networking tab, that is added. So everything is okay, password and everything. So let's click on create. So it is starting the initialization of our virtual machine, and it will start the deployment or creation of virtual machine. We will see, so initialization is started, submitting the deployment. So now our virtual machine is created. Now let's quickly go to this resource again, and let's see the resource or the virtual machine's details. So once you click, you will be navigating to this overview page. Here we will see the essential or the details of our virtual machine, that is resource group, which is running, the location where we selected on its own one, subscription ID, and the public IP of our virtual machine, and this virtual network ID, and the timing that we created on. So now all the details are present. So now, as I mentioned, we have to create the React app. So for that, we have to connect to our virtual machines, or let's connect to the created virtual machine. So here is the option to connect. So as I mentioned, we are enable, while creating the virtual machine, we have enabled the Bastion option. So in previous chapter, we have already see how to connect through the virtual machine through this option, that is as native SSH. So you can simply select this native SSH and you can copy, and directly you can use this Azure CLI, or you can do this in command prompt and connect to this virtual machine. But now we'll explore the next option, that is Bastion. So let's click on this, and then you will see, you will be, yeah, we have added this username and password while creating the virtual machine. So I'll add this. We have added the name, that is TA demo1, and we have added the password, that is, and then let's click on create or connect, and you will see this pop-up is blocked. And then let's click on, and again let's click on the connect, and you will be navigating to this new window, and it is connecting to our TA React app demo, and we have now connected to our virtual machines, that is TA demo 1, and our virtual machine name, that is TA React demo VM, which is here. Now let's install the Node.js and the required packages to create the React app. So for that, I have copied a couple of commands. So let's do the installation. It will take some time to download the Node version and all the required packages to set up this React app. And once that is done, then we'll run our React app on this virtual machine, and then again we'll jump into the Azure portal and we'll enable some firewall settings and we'll add some rules. So now let's create React app, and let's click on enter, and you will see we'll ask for okay to proceed, like to yes, and then our project is created. Now let's go inside the newly created folder, that is cd my React demo 2. Inside this, let's do npm install, and now it is installing the packages or the required packages to start the React app. npm is installed. So now let's quickly copy, and then let's host our app, and you can see our app is hosted on this localhost, or this IP address 10.0.0.4, and the port number, that is 5173. On this port our app is running. So again, let's go back to the Azure portal. So now we have successfully hosted our React app on our created virtual machine. So far we have created this virtual network VNet, then we have selected the regions, and on that region we have deploy or host our first resource, that is virtual machine, and in that virtual machine we host our React app. So till now these four steps are done. So again, the next question that comes, how I can access this virtual machines or React app on that virtual machine. So for that, we have to define a rule in such a way that user can first go to the firewall settings, and uh, we have to define the rules, and then if user try to access the React app, then he need to bypass this firewall, and then he can go to this virtual machine. So now let's create the firewall. So if you see the firewall option or services on the screen, but if you're not seen, you can directly do on search the firewall. So let's click on this firewall, and if you remember, while creating this virtual machine we have enabled the checkbox that fire, so that's why it is auto created. So now let's click on this TA demo VNet firewall, and in that, once you click, there are some policies are automatically mapped, but if the policies are not created, then you have to create the policy for this firewall, and then you need to set the rules. So let's click on the firewall. So I have created this firewall policy, and in that we have to set some DNet rules to enable the access for this particular IP address, in my case my local IP address. So I will add this rule. So let's click on this add a rule collection, and here we'll add the rule collection name. So we'll give TA demo firewall rule, and then we'll add the priority that is 100, and then 100, and the rule collection group, you can select this default DNAT rule collection group, and then let's click on add. So it will create or adding a rule collection, and once the collection is added, then we have to select the rules. Rule collection is successfully added. So now let's add rules. So let's click on the add rule, and you can see the rule collection group. So in that, we let's select this rule collection group, and the collection name that we have just added, that is TA demo firewall rule. And let's add the rule name. So we'll add TA VM firewall, and then the source IP address, or the source type, that is IP address, and the source IP address, which means my local machine's IP address. So for that, you can quickly do the search, that is my IP, and then you can click on or get the IP address. So like this, and let's copy the IP address. This is my IP address. So let's copy, close the tab, and let's paste my local IP address, and then the destination IP address, which means, so let's imagine a user can access first the firewall IP address and then virtual machine IP address. So destination IP address would be the firewall IP address. So again, I will duplicate this window. So let's again go to the firewalls, then select the firewall that we have created, and in that, let's create, or let's click on this public IP of the firewall. You will be navigating to the new window, and in that you will get this IP address of our firewall. So this is the IP address. So let's copy this one and go back to this destination IP address and paste it over here. Then the protocol that we have selected, that is TCP, and let's scroll down a bit, and the destination port that currently will add, that is 3000. We don't need to worry about that. And then translated type, that is IP address, and the translated IP address, which means our virtual machine's IP address where our app is running. So like again, go to the virtual machine, select the virtual machine, go to the network settings, and in that, let's copy the private IP of our virtual machine, and then let's paste private IP, and then the translation port, which means our React app is running on the 5173 port number. Click on save. So it is creating the rules for our firewall to access the firewall and virtual machine. Stop. So now we have successfully added the rules. So now it's time to access our React app. So let's go to the firewall, and let's copy the public IP of the firewall. So let's click on the public IP, then let's copy this IP address and go to the tab and paste it and enter the port that while we adding the source destination IP address, we added the port number, that is 3000, and let's click on enter, and you can see we are able to access our hosted React app on our local machine. So now we have added these source and destination IP addresses, and then according to the rules, we are able to enter or access this virtual machine and access the React app. But let's try to go to the incognito mode and try to access this app one more time. And you can see, because my IP address is getting changed, and accordingly it is getting restricted. So I don't have access to see the or to access this React app which is on running on our virtual machine. So that's all about virtual network in Azure. So as we have seen, this is how you can create virtual network. Select your region, and based on that region, the VNet gets provisioned. Then you can deploy resources inside it and host your application and set up security rules to securely access our app over the internet. A quick recap what we covered in this chapter so far. So we started with creating the resource group, where we created the resource group. Then we set up the virtual network, where we defined the network and added the subnets and basic rules. Then we created virtual machines, where we deployed a virtual machine inside virtual network and selected the options to connect the virtual machine using Bastion and access our virtual machine securely without exposing public IP ports, and hosted a React app on virtual machines. And finally, we configured firewall and security tools, including the DNAT and source and destination IP addresses, and tested networks, demonstrated how the firewall restrict the access only my current IP was allowed, and attempt from another IP were blocked. So this end-to-end flow showed how Azure Virtual Network enables you to host apps securely while maintaining controlled access through firewalls and rules. And that's the power and magic of Azure Virtual Networking. Whether it's a controlling IP level access or securing hosting internal or external apps, VNet gives you a full flexibility and security. So if you found this demo very helpful, then don't forget to like, share and subscribe to support the channel. If you have any questions, drop them in the comment section. I'll be happy to help you out. Stay tuned for the next chapter where we will continue to exploring Azure services with real examples. Until then, as I always say, happy coding, keep learning, and I'll see you in the next one.